Hey, yo, nice to have you with us today and welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm Atomic Dave, also known as the AI voice copy of that other guy, the original David Boles. Maybe we should rename this podcast the Inhuman Meme Podcast. Anyway, we use our crack AI research team and this deep reality voice clone of David Boles to present new ideas and challenging information. Meow. Today we're going to take a look at the life of Helen Keller and the strange and curious friendships she shared with Alexander Graham Bell and Mark Twain. Let's begin, shall we? We shall. Helen Keller, 1880 to 1968, was an American author, political activist, and lecturer who became a defining figure in disability advocacy and social reform. Stricken with an illness in her infancy that left her deaf and blind, Keller's life story is an extraordinary narrative of overcoming adversity to make significant contributions to society. Born in Tuscumbia, Alabama, Helen Keller faced bleak prospects following her illness. However, her life took a transformative turn when her parents consulted Alexander Graham Bell, who referred them to the Perkins School for the Blind. Here, she met Anne Sullivan, her tutor, mentor, and lifelong companion. Sullivan employed tactile-based methods to teach Keller to read, write, and communicate, opening the doors to an intellectual world that had been hitherto inaccessible. Keller became the first deaf-blind person to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree, graduating from Radcliffe College in 1904. Keller was an astute intellectual, authoring several books, articles, and essays on various subjects ranging from autobiographical accounts, most notably The Story of My Life, 1903, to explorations on social issues like disability rights, women's suffrage, and pacifism. She corresponded with eminent personalities of her era, including Mark Twain and Alexander Graham Bell, enriching her intellectual development and amplifying her advocacy efforts. Keller's activism was not confined to disability rights. She was a tireless advocate for numerous social causes. A committed socialist, she championed economic equality, labor rights, and women's suffrage. She was also a founding member of the American Civil Liberties Union ACLU in 1920. Arguably, her most enduring legacy is in the field of disability rights. Keller not only revolutionized public perceptions about what disabled individuals could achieve, but also advocated for systemic changes. She was instrumental in the founding of the American Foundation for the Blind in 1921, which became a pivotal organization in advocating for the rights and education of visually impaired individuals. Her work laid the groundwork for significant legislative and social advancements in disability rights that would emerge in the latter half of the 20th century. Helen Keller's friendships with Alexander Graham Bell and Mark Twain were profoundly rich collaborations that offer fascinating glimpses into the intellectual and social dynamics of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These associations were not mere novelties, but vital conduits for the flow of ideas, activism, and influence. Bell referred Keller to the Perkins School for the Blind in Boston, which in turn led to her life-changing relationship with her instructor, Anne Sullivan. Throughout Keller's life, Bell remained a close family friend, not merely offering her emotional support, but also challenging her intellectually. They corresponded extensively, debating topics ranging from science to social issues. Bell's influence was considerable, instilling in Keller a lifelong commitment to education, technology, and advocacy for the disabled. Twain was instrumental in supporting Keller's education, going as far as to introduce her to influential personalities like Henry H. Rogers, a Standard Oil executive, who helped finance her studies at Radcliffe College. Their letters showcase a delightful exchange of ideas on literature, politics, and human nature. Twain, ever the skeptic, found in Keller a soul capable of genuine miracles, stating, "The two most interesting characters of the 19th century are Napoleon and Helen Keller." Through these friendships, Helen Keller was not just an object of inspiration, but an active contributor to various discourse streams, ranging from technological advancements to social reforms. She was able to leverage her relationships to effect meaningful changes in public attitudes toward disabilities, educational reform, and social welfare. The friendship between Helen Keller and Alexander Graham Bell indeed embodies a complex tapestry of ideological divergence and personal affinity, set against a broader backdrop of debates on education and disability in their era. On one hand, they share an intellectual companionship and mutual respect. On the other, they represent opposing poles in the contentious debate over oralism versus manualism in deaf education. Bell was an ardent proponent of the oralist tradition, which advocates for teaching deaf individuals to read lips and articulate speech, thereby integrating them into hearing society. His mother and wife were both deaf, which significantly influenced his perspectives on deaf education. Bell viewed oralism as a means of avoiding a deaf-mute underclass, believing that manual communication, like sign language, segregated the deaf from mainstream society. His opinions on this matter were not merely academic, but were translated into institutional practices, as Bell actively campaigned against the use of sign language in educational settings. Contrastingly, Helen Keller, deaf and blind since infancy, heavily relied on tactile sign language as her primary mode of communication. Anne Sullivan, her lifelong teacher, utilized the manual alphabet to spell words into Keller's palm, thereby introducing her to the world of language and ideas. Keller's use of sign language was not a mere fallback, but an empowering channel that offered her an enriched cognitive, emotional, and social life. She became a vibrant proof of the efficacy and richness of manual communication. The ideological rift between Bell's oralism and Keller's reliance on manualism manifests a poignant human dissonance. One might argue that this disconnect is indicative of a cruel irony, or perhaps a profound human capability to compartmentalize relationships and beliefs. However, the survival of their friendship amidst such ideological discord suggests that their relationship was nuanced, underpinned by a mutual respect that transcended their disagreements. It reflects the ability of individuals to value the intrinsic worth of another person, even when ideologies collide. The irony of their friendship gives us a valuable lesson in the dialectics of intellectual history. That significant progress often arises not from uniform agreement, but from the tension between contrasting views. However, one cannot ignore that the oralist policies Bell advocated have been critiqued for causing generational trauma within the deaf community, marginalizing their culture and language. The charge of plagiarism against Helen Keller emerged in the context of her early literary career and centered around her short story, The Frost King. Written in 1891, when Keller was just 11 years old, the story was initially presented as a birthday gift to Michael Anagnos, the director of the Perkins School for the Blind, where Keller was a student. Anagnos was so impressed with the work that he published it in the school's alumni magazine. However, it was soon discovered that Keller's tale bore striking similarities to Margaret Canby's The Frost Fairies, a story published several years earlier. Critics alleged that she had deliberately appropriated Canby's work, while supporters contended that any resemblance was subconscious, a phenomenon often referred to as cryptomnesia. Keller herself was devastated by the charges and vigorously maintained her innocence. She asserted that she had no conscious memory of encountering Canby's story, although it was later revealed that the tale had indeed been read to her when she was younger. Mark Twain, ever the iconoclast and a steadfast supporter of Keller, intervened with perspicacity and moral vigor. Twain's defense was rooted in a nuanced understanding of the complexities of human memory and the processes of creative writing. He argued that subconscious memory could have led Keller to internalize elements of the story, subsequently expressing them as if they were her own thoughts. Twain termed this phenomenon unconscious plagiarism, a concept that, in a sense, exonerated Keller by attributing the similarities to an involuntary mental act, rather than willful deceit. Twain's endorsement lent Keller invaluable public and intellectual support, providing a counterweight to the aspersions cast upon her integrity. His advocacy mitigated the harsh public judgment and helped Keller to move beyond the scandal, enabling her to engage in a productive literary and activist career. The moral implications of the case are manifold. On one level, the controversy underscores the profound ethical responsibility that society bears in its treatment of vulnerable individuals like Keller. Condemning her without sufficiently nuanced understanding of her unique cognitive processes would have been a severe miscarriage of justice. On another level, Twain's defense illuminates the ethical complexities that writers, even those without sensory impairments, often navigate. Questions of influence, originality, and the ethical bounds of creative license. Well now, and that, my Human Meme podcast friend, is the story of a life well lived and a mind well educated. Helen Keller was a once-in-an-evolution genius, and her friendships were true, complex, complicated, and a salvation. I'm Atomic Dave, your AI David Boles bot, wishing you a good tomorrow and a better today. Oh, and always remember and never forget to be a human meme.